kids. My name is Dax, and I am new to Cool Kids team. And my flavor is watermelon. Try one today.
IBN is in the process of printing English Qurans for free distribution to non-Muslims, new Muslims, and the curious wishing to educate themselves on Islam. To support this initiative, you can contact us at the studio 645-4426 or 663-8373. Those numbers again, 645-4426 or 663-8373. Join us in IBN's Quran Drive.
Assalamu alaikum. May the peace and blessings of God be with you. You are viewing the Rite Fit on IBN, the Islamic Broadcasting Network. I am your host, Bibi Ajuda, former lecturer at Corinth Teachers College and retired School Supervisor 3 with the Ministry of Education. Join us as we discuss several topics, including education, environment, health, technology, to name a few. This platform aims to educate and inform you, our viewers there, through our questions and discussion with subject matter experts. This evening, on the eve of the UN's 16 Days of Activism, November 25th to December 10th, we address a critical issue impacting families, communities, and lives nationwide: domestic violence. Beyond physical harm, it involves broken trust, silent suffering, and highlights the urgent need for support and meaningful change. We choose to highlight the issue with the right experts at the right time and, of course, the right fit. Joining us in the studio are two prominent ladies: Sabrina Maula Baksh, General Manager of the Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and Nafiza Mohammed, Attorney at Law. Sabrina will chat with us in the first half, and after the break, Nafiza will join us for the legal aspect. Sabrina, welcome to the Rite Fit.
Thank you very much. I'm very, very happy to be here. Thank you.
First, I must congratulate you on your National Award, Silver Medal, for the development of women. Tell us a bit about yourself. I know you could talk to us for the entire day, but our viewers, tell us about yourself a little bit.
Thanks for the invitation to share a little bit about myself. Simply, I'm a gender advocate. I believe in equality, women's equality, and I believe that women must always be safe, feel safe, and women have a right to equal opportunity, equal access. I'm a grandmother.
Wow, congrats.
Of a 2.5-year-old. Also a wife. So, and apart from that, involved in many local and regional activities, which takes up a lot of my time. Very committed to ending violence against women and girls.
And I must say, service to mankind, always giving back to it. Now let us understand what is domestic violence. The issues is beyond physical. What are the different forms of domestic violence? Our viewers there, we hear or know, but we need to give them, inform them a little bit, educate them a little bit.
Yeah, domestic violence is huge. And many of us are more familiar with the physical abuse.
Correct.
And so it's a good question to find out what are the other types of abuse, which includes emotional abuse. And emotional abuse, it's about perpetrators whittling away at the self-worth of survivors, telling them things like they are not worth anything, they can't do anything right. So that's, the emotional violence that survivors are subjected to. Then we also have the sexual violence, and there is violence and sexual violence even in marriages. It happens in dating relationships, in visiting relationships. So any forced sexual activity within the context of a relationship, that's domestic violence, whether it's against a partner or a child.
Wow.
Yeah. And then we also have the psychological abuse, and those are situations in which a perpetrator threatens to harm a survivor. If you leave me, I will die. If you leave me, I will hurt you. Things like that. And the survivor experiences guilt and stay in relationships that they do not even want to stay in because of that guilt. So there is the the psychological abuse. And finally, there is the financial abuse, which many people are not even aware of.
Correct.
And these are situations in which the survivor is not allowed to have autonomy over or decision making about things regarding finance, not having access to money, not having access to a bank account. A perpetrator wants to have all the controls about the money in the house, and then say to the survivor, well, I will give you an allocation. You have this to spend within a particular week or month. It's around also not wanting a survivor to access a job or even further study.
Wow.
Yeah, denying that.
This control.
Yes, because it's totally about power and control. True. And so through these 5 means of abuse, the perpetrator has the victim where they want them, because it's essentially about exercising and maintaining power and control within a relationship.
And recently the UN has digital abuse.
Yeah,
Tell us a little bit about that one.
That's something recent.
Yes.
And but it affects not only the younger persons, but women and men, from all age groups. And so digital violence refers to the use of technology.
Correct.
To perpetrate any sort of violence, the violence that I referred to. So it includes things like stalking online, checking to see, where what the person is posting. Wow. Even sending threatening messages via, inbox, whatever, posting things and making statements about a survivor online. That's damaging.
Right. Or even pictures.
Pictures, threatening as well to send certain pictures or even videos.
Right.
So that's the extent, of what persons are using the technology for, because they can easily hide behind the technology.
Correct. It could have false name.
That's right. So that started, and we saw a huge jump during COVID, when persons did not have physical access to survivors.
They use the
and
time
so
there.
they use the digital technology to get at, even during the COVID period. And because it works, it means
they had a lot of time to sit and do
yes,
nothing. So
so now it has become a big thing. Yeah.
Wow.
And then there's also the issue of fraud. Yep. And we're looking at situations where women are being targeted. You have grooming as well, sexual grooming, where perpetrators are messaging, targeting young girls, sending them messages and luring them into going on dates and meet me in this particular place, leave your home and come to me, So it's a very dangerous, it's a dark place.
And I want you to emphasize that point, especially for our young girls who figure, why, this is a handsome guy,
yes.
when the picture is fake.
Definitely. And then, say to them, you're beautiful, send me a picture, or, I will see that maybe you get into a modeling agency.
Wow.
and things like that. And then it starts with a simple picture, and, and they say, well, and it may not even be people in Trinidad. I'll tell
Correct.
you that, because what they do is you have people from other countries, and they use it to blackmail people.
Oh.
You send me money, or else I'll put it on Facebook.
Wow.
And sometimes if you hear a 12-year-old or a teenager commit suicide, sometimes it can be, and we have instances where it's because of a threat.
Wow.
You send me money, or you do this, or you do that, and if you do not do it, I'll put it online.
And they could take your face and do all kinds of things with
and
it.
then, as well, there's a phrase, it doesn't come to me, but it's about using their technology to ascribe words that you did not say.
Yep.
And that's also a threat. So it's a trend, but it's a very dark and dangerous trend.
Wow. And it's getting more predominant now.
Yeah, definitely. I recall when we think it's happening only with younger people, I recall a situation quite recently where an older, mature woman traveled all the way to a foreign country thinking that she was speaking to a king.
Correct. We
And
know about that
so,
one.
So it's not the younger people, it's older women, and no one is spared.
And people need to be aware of that. We had a program on artificial intelligence, and we had where people talking, and you think it's real, but it wasn't real. You could
Definitely.
imitate anybody, put in voice state, and you think it's somebody, and it's all fake.
Yeah.
And this is critical for every single person. Sometimes you have requests on Facebook, some person looking very handsome, and next thing when you watch out their profile, two sets of profile.
But I'll
pics.
tell you as well, the predators out there, they look for what you post. So they target maybe people who are lonely, people who they feel that, have lost a sense of belonging, people who are vulnerable. So we may think that posting things on Facebook, it's a safe place. It's not. People are looking at what you're posting, and they're able to discern this is a target. So let me, so they begin with the inbox, I've noticed your profile. Even I get things like that in my inbox. You're beautiful, I've noticed your profile. I mean, oh gosh, you're looking at someone, as at my age, and you're telling me you're gorgeous and beautiful. I mean, I must suspect something with that, And so for people who are vulnerable and not in a good place, and people needing attention and love and things like that, you feel good because there's somebody who's paying me attention. So let me see where this is going. And they're smooth. The perpetrators are smooth.
Oh, they slick at it.
So they lure you in, and before you know it, you're committed and you've done something that you may not be proud of, and it's too late. It's too late, to turn back.
So viewers, there, take note, please. How prevalent, I know it is prevalent, is domestic violence in Trinidad and Tobago. What are the current trends? And for this, we have a slide. I know it's a wordy slide, but we need to give you some facts and figures on it, so you can talk to them.
Yeah, definitely. So we know that 1 in every 3 women in Trinidad and Tobago have experienced at least one form of intimate partner violence in their lifetime.
Wow.
Yes. Look at these figures. Between 2010 and 2015, there were over 231 domestic violence murders. It works out to be an average of about 25 killings per year. In 2017, 52 women were killed, and that's the total femicide rate. 43, and why I chose that is because of that year, 43 were said to be domestic violence related. Yes. Almost 15% of women in Trinidad and Tobago have a male partner, who verbally threaten them or threaten to hurt someone that they care about.
And that's a high figure.
Yeah, definitely. And very, very important that I want to talk about. 1 in every 3 women experience physical or sexual partner violence. They do not say anything about it. Very importantly as well, 1 in every 3 women who experience it, they remain silent. They do not tell anybody about it.
I'm sure sometimes because of sheer embarrassment at times.
There are a lot of reasons that people remain silent. There's not a safe environment. There's the fear of being ridiculed. There's the fear of I belong to
okay, you could come back
family.
to Miss Sabrina, right? And this is in your job and thing. Can you see warning signs in someone experiencing abuse?
Yes. Sometimes we mistake love and people showing love
or too much
for the abuse.
Too sweet in front of everybody.
Definitely. Yeah. So if a partner wants to drop you off and pick you up for everything, even though you have a car or access to transport, you may feel, people may say, well, we're living in times of insecurity, so it's dangerous to be out there. No, I'm not saying it's not. So it's good if a partner is willing to take you around. But if they want to do it all the time and insist, and sometimes will probably, if you're scheduled to finish work at 4 o'clock, will come as early as 2 o'clock and sit down outside of the building and just monitors where you're going all of the time, wants to know everything. Who will drop you? Who will be there? Who are the people you'll be talking to? If you're on a telephone call, wants to know what is the conversation about, monitoring how long you've been on the conversation, wants to know what you've talked about, wants to take you away from family and friends. One of the chief things is that the perpetrator wants to be the center of your attention, stop you from talking to your friends, doesn't want you to go by your family, restricts your movement, say to you, well, listen, I know everything now, so if you need any advice, come to me. I love you, and threaten things like, if you leave me, I will die. So sometimes when we're in love, we feel that the person, jealousy is a thing we feel happy about, but jealousy is a thing you'd want to look at, especially if it becomes something of the norm. So we just have to, it comes to us and we dismiss it because we say,
He loves me
he loves me a lot, and and if he loves me so much that he's jealous or she is jealous. And so we say, well, it's happening now, but if we get married or if we get further into the relationship, I can change that person.
Oh yeah.
I want to tell you,
there.
do not think you cannot change a person. You cannot change a perpetrator. The only person that can change a perpetrator is the perpetrator themselves. So do not think that we can change them after we've gotten married to them, or after we've gotten engaged, or we are in a long-term relationship with
Excellent.
them. That's very, very important.
I know there is, as you said, a psychological and social impact of domestic violence. How it affects children and other families.
It's huge. The most affected are children and even families.
Wow. I imagine so.
Yeah, children, they're affected even in their schools, how they interact with other children. Sometimes they can become aggressive. So we see children acting out, even primary school children.
Yes, we talked about abuse and
definitely,
bullying.
and bullying. So they bully. So because they've been exposed to the violence, that's the behavior, because it's learned behavior.
Wow.
And so, some children wet their beds. So it happens at the physical level, it happens at the psychological level. And so they're impacted in so many ways, some children become very, very quiet. We sometimes see quiet children and we feel that they're well behaved, but it's because they've clammed up. They're not sure how to express themselves, and they're so psychologically harmed that the only way to deal with it is to stay silent, and because they're so traumatized they cannot speak about it. So it comes out in various ways. We see violence erupting in the primary and the secondary school systems. Those are hurt people, those are hurt children, and hurt people hurt other people.
Right.
And so sometimes we're quick to judge. These are children, have no behavior. The parents, do not know how to parent. They're doing a horrible jobs. But we have to look beyond how people are reacting.
Get the root of.
Yeah, get to the root of it. And chances are, I'm not saying all cases, but chances are, those children who are reacting, it's because of an environment, they're exposed to an environment of trauma. And if it comes from the family, because that's domestic violence, that's family violence, and it's very worrisome. And it's more prevalent than we think. And if we think it's happening only in rural communities or people from a socioeconomic class, that's not the case. It happens across the board. It's just that, some
class,
people can
race,
hide it better.
Ethnicity,
Definitely,
whatever.
yes.
And some people in this, you have a good job and you are embarrassed to go and talk about it, or you endure that silent suffering there.
1 in every 3 women remain silent. Yeah.
And in your case, I know you would have seen survivors, but what are the psychological long-term effects on them?
You live with it for life, huh? Survivors never. It's a constant road to healing, and things trigger you. So when you think you're on a pathway towards healing, something may happen, a scent even, if you smell something, a loud noise.
It triggers something.
Yeah, even a song, it will trigger. So you are triggered for the rest of your life. A survivor does not truly heal. They may find coping mechanisms, and there may be moments of peace and happiness and contentment, but the triggers cause you to relive the experience. So it's long-term, not only for the survivors, but even the families. Can you imagine mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, uncles, and know you've been exposed to violence and trying, have a history of trying to help, to support, but they're not able to, and they know how hurt and how it impacts you, but there's little they can do. They try to help you to leave, to exit the relationship, but you can't. We tend to say, why are they staying?
Yeah.
We ask the question, we blame them, we shame them. Why doesn't that person just leave? It's not as easy as that, as we think.
And that brings me to my next question. How does domestic violence intersect with poverty, unemployment, substance abuse, or financial?
Yes, it does intersect, and that is why I raised the issue of we think that it happens only in certain classes of people. And so we think that, only poor women and men stay in abusive relationships. That's not true. But then as well, remember we talked about the 5 types of abuse.
Correct.
It happens for a reason. So if we take away your finances, if we take you away from your friends and family, if we whittle away at your self-worth and say you can't do anything right, if we threaten you with, if you leave me, I'll harm you, I'll harm the children, I'll harm your property, and I physically beat you on top of all of that, when those 5 things come together, and I have no money, I have no access to money with the financial abuse.
Right.
It means that the issues of poverty come. If I'm not working, I do not have access to anything. And so we always say that it's a complicated, sensitive thing. It's not as simple as we all think. And so issues of poverty, issues of not having access to resources, issues of thinking I'm not worth anything, restricts that person and their decision-making power and their autonomy. And that's important, and that is why the perpetrators use all 5 to keep you there, so you're incapable of making decisions.
Wow, I wish they'd use their brains and intelligence for something more productive, because that is really, going to weaving into people. How accessible are shelters, hotlines, and counseling services for survivors?
Yeah. There are agencies like the Coalition Against Domestic Violence, which is a non-profit organization, but you also have shelters. I want to say, when I joined the Coalition Against Domestic Violence in 2018, there were approximately 10 shelters functioning.
Okay.
Do you know that we're down to, I would say, 4.5?
Wow.
Simply because the majority of the shelters are run by non-profit organizations. The Muslim community had Medina House.
Yes, I heard about that.
Yes,
one.
but Medina House, they were doing phenomenal work, but they had to close their doors, because of lack of resources. And so while we have shelters available, it's not enough to handle the amount of people requiring the safe spaces. And so you have government agencies, but we know the bureaucracy associated with the government agency. If you try to get support from the government agency, you have very few non-profit organizations who offer free services. We are one of the few who offer free services.
To abuse
to,
and
yeah, to
victims.
both perpetrators,
Yes,
to
and
survivors, and that includes women and children.
And you have counseling services
Yes,
as
definitely.
well.
We counseling, when people hear counseling, people get turned off when they hear counseling because they think, well,
I'm a little bit something
yes,
is
yes,
wrong
something
with
is,
me.
Yeah, something is wrong with me, and if people hear that I'm getting counseling, they'll think that I'm mad or I'm crazy or something is wrong with me. So we offer trauma support. We prefer to say it's trauma support.
Right.
And I can tell you, persons experiencing domestic violence, we deal with people every day who come to us and talk to us, and they want to get out of relationships, and they want, they say, I want a protection order, I want all of the other stuff. But when we say to them, listen, you need trauma support, you need counseling support, some of them are reluctant. Because they figure that they could handle it on their own. You can't. If you're experiencing, and I want to talk to you, if you're experiencing this kind of abuse, you cannot do it alone. Saying that you do not need counseling or support, it's tantamount to, to saying I can handle it on my own and I do not need help. you do need help. We all need help to get out of this, you know.
They're in denial, I would
Yes,
think.
yeah.
You talk about counseling and support. What role do religious leaders, educators, community figures play in prevention?
A huge role, a definite role. So I want to speak to the religious leaders out
Talk
there.
to them.
Please, gentlemen and ladies, the majority of the religious leaders are men. And, you know, so I want to talk with you. We've had situations where survivors go to their pastors, go to their imams, go to their pundits, and were told, you know, God or Allah or whoever says, you know, God doesn't want, whatever form of God, you know, you worship, God doesn't want broken families. God doesn't want divorces. We want to say to you, you know, that when, of course, we all want at the end of the day wholesome families. We all want, every religious organization, every religious entity wants that. We want families. But at the end of the day, if you're in a family that's hurting children, if you're in a family that's hurting men and women, if you're in a family that's toxic, that is not a good environment, you have to understand that those children will become abusers, and those children will look for spouses that abuse, and the cycle will continue. We want to say to you, when you give your messages, speak about an environment, speak to survivors, speak to perpetrators about not abusing, not using violence and the various forms of violence as a form of disciplining. You know, when we talk, you're an educator, baby, and you know, when we talk about using discipline for children, and we go to communities and we say to communities, do not give your children licks, do not beat them. People laugh at us and say, but I got licks and look how good I've turned out. Do we really think that we've turned out well?
You have that,
you know?
you still have it in your head somewhere.
Oh, definitely. If we think that we need to beat children into submission, then something is definitely wrong with us. So we need to begin to say to our children, and we need to understand that violence, inclusive of physical violence, does not equate discipline. And we have to do it, you know, starting from the children.
So, time has gone so fast.
Yeah.
I mean, and we have a slide, we'll show it at the end of the program, that shows where people can get help. And you just spoke to the leaders there. What is your closing comment here to our viewers out there?
Yeah. I would like to say to the 1 in every 3 women, you know, experiencing and who are suffering in silence and who feels that there's no safe place for them to disclose. You are not alone in this. Many women, many men suffer and suffer in silence, but there is help available. The first step is to seek the help. Please, I'm asking you, seek the help. Call the Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Call the other numbers which will come up on the screen. Reach out. There is the Gender-Based Violence Unit. There is Families in Action. There are organizations out there, you know, who remain available to provide the support. But we cannot do it if you do not take the first step to reach out. And we do our work in confidence. There's total confidentiality. So reach out to us and we will make ourselves available to help.
Sabrina, thank you so much. I think we need a day-long program to really go into this. But at least our viewers out there, you know something, a little more about domestic violence. And at the end of the program, we will put up the hotlines for you. But let's take a break. And after the break, we will talk about the legal aspect of domestic violence with attorney at law Nafisa Mohammed. Thank you so much. We'll be right back.
Never too early, never too late to recharge and hydrate. Get your daily dose the right way. Grab an oasis, now why wait? Never too early, never too late to recharge and hydrate. Get your daily dose the right way. Grab an oasis, now why wait? The greatest, the safest oasis for sure. Oasis, it's purer than pure.
Fruitopia, the drink that rocks your lunchtime. Fruitopia, Fruitopia, it's a drink that's hot. The citrus punch, fruit punch tastes nice. Guava, pineapple, that give me a vibe. We no wanna come to the test. Perfect thing for my lunch. Flavors pack a punch. Fruitopia, Fruitopia. It's a drink that's hype. The citrus punch, fruit punch tastes nice. Fruitopia, the drink that rocks your lunchtime.
Try our new passion fruit flavor today. Taste the passion.
Welcome back to the Rite Fit. We are discussing domestic violence. With me in the studio now, we are joined by attorney at law, Nafisa Mohammed. No introduction needed in Trinidad and Tobago. Nafisa, tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit.
Well, I am an attorney at law. Assalamu alaikum to all your viewers and good day. I have been practicing since 1989, and I have, during my career, been involved in a lot of the reforms that have taken place legally and otherwise in terms of domestic violence and child protection and family laws in this country. And, you know, just before I came in, I would have had the opportunity to listen to your guest, Sabrina, who is now heading the coalition against violence in this country, and I want to take the opportunity to congratulate her on her national award, and I'm very happy to know that she's at the helm of that organization, which has been playing a role in this country for so many years. I am also president of the San Juan Muslim Ladies Organization, and I'm a former this and a former that and a former other thing, and a victim of political violence, if I may say so.
So today we're talking, let's dive straight into the discussions. And you heard Sabrina,
yes,
and we could have talked on and on about
yes,
domestic violence. And we talk about victims here. What laws currently protect victims of domestic violence in Trinidad and Tobago?
But thankfully in Trinidad and Tobago, we have a Domestic Violence Act that is in force. And I want to take the opportunity to, because that act was passed in the Parliament in 1999. Prior to that, there was a Domestic Violence Act in 1991, the first time ever that in our country we had a law enacted to treat with this scourge of domestic violence. And It was significantly reformed in 1999. At the time, the current Prime Minister, Kamala Prasad Bisesa, was in fact the Minister of Legal Affairs.
Excellent.
And
Kudos.
she had established a committee chaired by Stephanie Daly, who is the key person who headed the committee that established the family court. And it consisted of critical stakeholders. And, you know, when that law was being developed at the time in 1999, there was a particular incident that occurred in the Valsin area where someone was murdered. There were screams coming out of a household. And by the time the police reached, the murder had taken place. And those things would have propelled a lot of discussions in the national community about domestic violence, so that when the changes, the reforms were taking place, the big issue then was the powers of the police as it relates to domestic violence and how they respond to treating with domestic violence.
So
And
we're coming back to that just to deal
Yes.
with the police. But what types of abuse are under this, the law?
Well, so this piece of
Include.
legislation, which was fairly recently amended in 2020, there were some changes that took place to expand the categories of persons. But I'm glad you asked what types of abuses. I listened to Sabrina. She discussed some of the forms of it. But in the legislation itself, it defines the different forms of abuse. It talks about physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse.
Excellent.
And there's a definition for each in the act. We don't have to go into
To all that.
detail.
Maybe now they might have to add digital abuse.
I was so interested in what you were talking about
Yes.
with the IT revolution that is happening in the world and the forms of abuse with IT abuse. It's real and it's happening there.
And we need to get into that because
Correct.
it's prevalent at
It's
this
prevalent.
moment.
It's prevalent.
What, you know, who qualifies for protection under the Domestic
So
Violence
again,
Act?
in the act that is in force and the recent amendments, they have expanded the categories of persons who can apply. So you have, for example, the spouse of the respondent, a member of the household, a child, whether it's a blood child or a child of the family.
Wow.
You know, you may have a stepchild living in the house.
And this
a
is
dependent.
information for people out there.
Yeah.
I think some of them realize other people
Yes.
can be protected.
Yeah, even if you're in a living-in relationship and so, and there's abuse taking place, and now with the expansion in the categories of who can apply, there's a form of abuse that is so rampant in this country, and it's elderly abuse
As well.
as well. And thankfully, the laws
That is
have
in
been
the law
reformed.
as
It has
well.
to include.
Okay. And someone experiencing domestic violence and want legal protection. What are some of the steps to
Right.
take?
So with the legislation, the idea was to make it an easy process for a victim to be able to get redress in the form of what is called a protection order. Now, by and large, a protection order is a piece of paper.
Well, my next question would have been,
yes.
what is a protection order?
Right. So there is a process that is not cumbersome that has to be observed to get a protection order. It's where an application is made to the court. Our judicial system has been changing so rapidly. There are new courts of law. We now have a family and children division of the High Court, so that in the family court there is a particular court with jurisdiction that deals with domestic violence matters. But you know, in every district there have been magistrates court. We call them district courts nowadays, right? So you could have gone in physically into the courthouse and ask for the clerk of the peace and indicate what is the situation and have a summons taken out against the perpetrator. But with the COVID situation and everything is online, there is now an online system that you can use
To apply
for a protection order. You can send an email, and I wish your viewers can take down this.
Tell them.
You can send an email directly to the court at domesticviolence.response@ttlawcourts.org. And your email must include information, for example, a synopsis of the matter, a little summary of what it is that has been happening, the name and address of the applicant,
Okay.
a contact number for the applicant, and a copy of your ID card,
Right.
and an email address so that they can,
respond
and
to
they are
you.
very efficient in their response.
See, I'm sure our viewers or people out there listening doesn't have that information.
No, there's also, if either the applicant or a representative
I was going
even
to ask you that. Can a protection order be granted
can be
without the
applied for.
abuser being present in court or by someone else?
But
Two
that's
things.
right. So two things. Someone can apply, for example, a social worker or somebody, the police or somebody can apply for protection order on behalf of. It's
Okay.
provided for in the Act.
So the person don't have to actually go there.
Well, to make the application, the particulars of the applicant will be the victim. And because it's the victim who wants the protection order.
Right.
But there are provisions for someone else to make the application on behalf of. Now, you can, when you make that application, within a week, it's a very speedy process.
It's
that
very
there should
efficient
be
if within
a
a
court
week,
hearing.
yeah.
It is supposed to be within a week, a 7-day period. Now, when the matter comes up for hearing for the first time, if when you apply the summons or the application, it has to be served on the perpetrator, and therein lies a challenge in the system.
Hold that there. I want to share with our audience out
Yes.
there audio of a victim.
Very well.
I didn't put any part of being choked up on my own and make another appeal so that matter would be heard and nothing came.
You know, with technology
I
again.
am a victim of domestic violence. My abuse was mental, physical, verbal, psychological, financial, and physical. My relationship was for 30 years, 26 of which I was being abused. I was isolated and separated from my family, and I stayed and endured all the abuse because of my children. And because my abuser made me feel as though that I am and was nothing without him. He controlled all the finances, and I really couldn't manage on my own with 2 children. I had no money and no job and nowhere to turn. It was very difficult for me. I turned to the court and the police to seek help. The court helped me in some regard, but with a protection order, a piece of paper does not protect me from being abused. I went to the police when the order was violated, and they did nothing. I had to go back to the court on my own and make another appeal so that my matter would be heard, and nothing came out of it. So my abuser goes victorious again. So I decided to protect myself from becoming another statistics, so I left. The abuse didn't stop there because he would stalk me. I was forced to live in inhumane conditions, and where I got a job, my abuser would stalk me, threaten me, defamate my character. He would go to my employer and sabotage my job, so I was back to square one, only to endure pressure that I would have to go back to.
That was a real victim. And you hear, and my question would have been, what role do police have in enforcing protection order?
So I move around with this. This is a manual that was developed in the early 2000s to assist the police in investigating and responding to reports of domestic violence. Under our Domestic Violence Act, there are elaborate provisions as it relates to the police, all right? If a report is made to the police or on the 999 number or whatever, they are required, as they respond at the residence to a report of domestic violence, or if you go into the station and you make a report, there ought to be some investigation. So the police service has, you see, because changes have been taking place, there is a need for ongoing training because they have their guidelines. This manual has been made available to the police service. Justice Jean Permanent, former Justice of Appeal, headed a committee that developed this manual to assist the police in responding to domestic violence.
Wow.
There's also in the law, in the act, because normally to enter in somebody's premises, you can't just go and break down your gate and enter. But if you have reason to believe that a serious crime is being committed, as had happened on the eve of the 1999 debate that was taking place and somebody lost their lives, that propelled the lawmakers at the time to put in provisions in the law to deal with the police when they can enter and respond to a threat or a case of domestic violence. But if even they entered and they were not of the rank that would have the power to enter like that, there's a provision for a report to be made. Now, in every district, we know there are 9 districts where the police service have their district offices, and they are supposed to maintain a register of all reports of domestic violence, including orders that have been made. One of the problems that over the years with the implementation of the law is that even when you go to court and you get a protection order, there are times when the order may be breached. Now, in the Act, it tells you the types of orders the court can make. It might make an order that you are not to come within 50 feet or 100 feet of the victim, and an order is normally valid for 3 years.
And that's what she was saying. She had a protection order, and it was breached, and nothing was done about it.
So if a victim who has gotten an order, and that order is being broken, that victim ought to liaise with the police in the community that she lives in, and the police have a duty to respond, because this thing could involve jail, because they can take action for being in breach of a court order. That is a serious offense. And there are provisions in the law that provide some criminal sanctions for breaches of the protection order. And this is something that we need to come to terms with. You see, domestic violence has been treated as a quasi-criminal matter. But look at how many, Sabrina referred to some statistics with the number of deaths that have occurred. And domestic violence, when we were developing this manual in our committee, we talked about it being treated as a crime. And therefore, there are criminal sanctions, criminal penalties, criminal consequences.
Because we have how many lives lost because no action was, or inaction taken place.
So the Act has provisions, and in order for it to be enforced as we had envisaged, it requires ongoing training with our police service and other responders. And that awareness, this is why your program is so timely and so important. You wouldn't believe, Bibi, just before I came here today, yesterday I met someone who I have utmost regard for all the years that we were involved in dealing with reforming the systems for domestic violence. And so there is a lady named Mrs. Amber Dinoon. She used to be head of the SWAT, she was head of the HR unit in the TTPS years ago, a powerful, dynamic, retired police officer, and a person who was deep in our national security apparatus. And yesterday I met her. I felt so happy because I worked so closely with her. And everybody would remember Margaret Sampson Brown.
Yes, I remember her. I had a program with her on radio.
Well, look at that. And these are women who were in the system and who were able to make a significant dent and impact in terms of this manual. I got involved with this because I attended a forum that they were getting training at the time from the Ottawa Policing Unit. And, with the work that was happening with the police, one of the shortcomings in our system in responding efficiently and effectively to domestic violence matters is that we know what the police role is, and there's a manual, there are guidelines, they have their own standing orders that they have to follow through in the police service. But you see that interagency connectivity, because very often when there's a report of domestic violence, in a home, in a family, in a marriage, it's not that you want the marriage to break up, but you want the violence to stop.
But you need to save lives.
And you need to save lives.
Protect children who are in the home, within the family.
And the police have powers
that's
to charge for offenses in addition to.
This audio here, there was nothing done, and I'm asking the legal consequences for breaching a protection order.
There are consequences. You can be imprisoned. It's in the Act. There are provisions when the Act, once you serve that, the court makes an order, and the perpetrator, whoever is aware of the order, they have been served with it. If they are in breach, there are sanctions in the legislation where the police, they can, the exact provision, it's there in the Act, and the police powers of entry and arrest, enforcement of orders. So there's a fine on a first conviction to a fine not exceeding $9,000 or imprisonment for a period not exceeding 3 months. On a second conviction to a fine not exceeding $15,000 or imprisonment for a period not exceeding 24 months.
Wow.
So there are people who have been
fined.
Fined. There are people who have
Because
been
she's
imprisoned.
claiming, sometimes they don't serve the
But
person,
that
they
is
can't
it.
find
the
them.
Trini culture.
And we need to beef up on that.
Beef up. And
retraining, you are suggesting as well for police.
Training. And the seniors, those who are in charge of the police stations, have a responsibility to ensure that these matters, because in every station or in every district, there's some form of, there's a link with the community policing. And we do have trained officers there, but it has to be an ongoing thing. And we have to give it more urgent attention.
I think so. So look, we have statistics to see the number of lives lost.
You know what I want to remind you of? A few years ago, there was a gender-based violence unit established within the police service.
Correct.
And now that things have changed, I mean, there are significant changes, we just have to wait and hope and pray that the momentum is maintained.
But for the victim again, what legal support is available for a victim if she can't afford a lawyer?
Yes. Well, we have legal aid, but once, as I mentioned, the hotline, there's apart from that email I give, there is a domestic violence hotline that can be contacted, 866.
We would put up that slide at the end of the program, all right? I think I have that number on this slide.
Right. Or there's an email at dv@ttlawcourts.org. So I'll share that information with you. So once a party, an applicant gets to the court, and you have to, there are certain things you have to establish. It used to be based on a pattern of behavior. And one of the things I always advise my clients to do, if you know you are being abused and so, you need to make a report to the police station. And when you make that report, get your receipt in writing, because when time in the court proceedings, it helps as evidence to show the kind of behavior. You have to make a record. Keep a little notebook.
You must have, I always say, document.
With the date and the time and the details of what transpired.
No, something came into my mind about children.
Oh, God.
Do we have legal protection for children who witness domestic or experience domestic violence in the home?
That the adults fail to recognize. Very often the victims of abuse in the home. Now that abuse don't have to be physical abuse.
No, it's
but if you buffing and you're using obscene language, and that is verbal, it's emotional, that kind of abuse, who are the ones to be immediately impacted apart from you being the victim? It's the children. Sometimes a child may have to go and hide under a table or hide behind doors or something, but that is where attention is needed.
And it impacts on the child's lives.
You come from
children's lives.
You come from education, right? And I'm sure with your colleagues, when you speak to them, the symptoms are invariably manifested in the schools. Now teachers are trained to teach.
And that's what Sabrina alluded to. We have bullying in schools.
You have the bullying, but when a child comes to school and that child is showing some behavioral issues, we have an elaborate student support service now in the Ministry of Education.
Yes.
They used to call them child guidance and welfare officers.
And we have student
support services. Now, you don't want to subject a child all the time to interview after interview and having to relate what they witnessed and what they saw. But when a child comes in a classroom and that child is very sad and looking upset and things, it is the teachers who are picking up the vibes. And they are the ones, they have to now make a note, and that is where the principal and the parents and what they need to have some more attention being paid, because what they say, it takes a village to raise a child.
And children learn what they live.
So if with the collaboration through the school and the student support services, you can have the help being brought home for those, because you mentioned about counsel, people, Sabrina said it.
Yes.
People do like to hear about counseling as if it's an obscene word. But you know, very often when in a home, in a family, there are problems, sometimes you can talk it out. It's how you talk and the words you use. And with a neutral third party present, a lot can be achieved. And domestic violence is about power and control.
Control.
And that is what, you know, you want to be able to help at the home level to minimize the impact on children, because they are invariably the victims of the abuse that is happening in the home.
Good things
In
must
whatever
come to
form.
an end. What
Good.
are your closing remarks to our viewers out there,
I am
citizens
glad.
of Trinidad and Tobago?
In our country today, we know a lot is happening. There's a lot of violence in the society, but in our homes, with families, we have to go back to some basics. And with these issues, tomorrow is going to be international, well, the day when domestic violence is observed worldwide.
Correct.
And the next few days is 16 days of activism, and Sabrina would have spoken a bit about it, but we all have a hand, we are all in this thing together. And I think that with greater sensitization and awareness and a more preventative approach, we can help to minimize the scourge. Our objective should be to eradicate domestic violence from
We
our
hope
homes.
so.
But
And
we
guys,
have-
you could
we
bring
don't
up
give
the last slide where the contact information is there. Right, Gender-Based Violence Department, 612-2470. Victim and Witness Support, 612-0301. 800-SAVE, Childline, 622-4453. Coalition Against Domestic Violence, 624-0402. Rape Crisis Society, 627-7273. Legal Aid, 638-5222. And then you have Legal Aid at the Hugh Wooden Law School, 235-4960. And if he's a call back that email where somebody could email the court.
But through the courts, because of the online situation we have now, domestic violence.response@ttlawcourts.org, and we have another one, dv@ttlawcourts.org.
Okay, so in closing, I want to thank you for joining us this evening. Together, let us affirm that violence has no place in our homes, school, workplaces, or communities. Now is the time to learn, reflect, support one another, speak out, and advocate for those who cannot yet do so for themselves. Thanks to Almighty God for this opportunity. Thanks to my guests, Sabrina and Nafiza. Yes, time went and perhaps we might have to have another program.
Anytime.
Many thanks to the management and staff of IBN, Siddiq and Siddiqa, Brother Hasib behind the scene. Join us again next Monday at 8 p.m. with a rerun on Saturday at 5 p.m. Drop us a line if you would like to join this forum or you have a question for our next set of contributors, or if you have a question. Our topic for next week is community service education in scouting. You can contact us at 475-1439 or 645-4426. If you're unable to view us on cable, you can view us via Facebook, Tigo TV, or on YouTube. Assalamu alaikum. Good night.
Hey kids, my name is Dax, and I am new to Cool Kids team. And my